Welcome back. I am so excited that you have joined me again in the Aligned Womb, Aligned You podcast. I'm Kate Nagai, and I am your host and womb guide on this journey. I'm here to help you to lean into the language of your menstrual cycle so that you can align yourself and awaken and activate to your womb wisdom to live the most inspired life. I am so excited to jump into this episode and to dive into today's topic. So let's get started. Welcome back to the Welcome back to the podcast today. Today, we are diving into one of those conversations that I kind of wish someone would have sat me down and had with me in my 20s, if I'm being completely honest. Because here's the thing, your menstrual cycle, it's not just this inconvenient monthly visitor that shows up uninvited. It's actually your body's most sophisticated communication system, delivering you with detailed health reports every single month. And I think as women, this is so important to know because our menstrual cycle is one of those things that's just dismissed a lot of the time, or we're taught to ignore it, or we're trained to think it's gross, when in fact it is our biggest ally. So I want you to think about it like this. You wouldn't ignore your car's check engine light, right? Well, your cycle is basically your body's check engine light, the dashboard, the monthly maintenance report, all rolled into one. And most of us have been taught that we should just ignore it or just see it as something that we have to manage or suppress. But I'm here to tell you today that your cycle holds the keys to understanding your thyroid health, your stress levels, your blood sugar balance, your gut health, and so much more. It's incredible. So what if your period could actually guide you towards better sleep, towards clearer skin, stronger bones, and a calmer nervous system? Like, sign me up, right? So that's exactly what we're diving in today. So I encourage you to go grab your favorite tea, sit down, get cozy, and maybe even get a pen and paper, because today is all about us decoding what your body is trying to tell you. So a little bit of a reality check here. How many of us have been told that painful periods are normal, that PMS is just part of being a woman, that heavy bleeding is something that we just have to deal with? I'm going to say this loud and clear, and I really want you to hear me. Your body is not broken. Your hormones are talking to you. And when we learn their language, everything really does change in our life. See, your menstrual cycle is like getting this monthly report card on your health. And just like those report cards we used to get back in school, it's telling you where you're excelling and where you might need a little extra support. The star of the show here actually isn't our period, and it's the number one thing most women track. The star of the show is actually our ovulation. And most of us, when we hear ovulation, we think fertility. Ovulation is so much more than fertility. And I know we've been told that we are supposed to focus on the bleeding parts. And the thing is that the more that we focus on our bleed, the more that we're missing out on this actual main event that's happening in our body. Ovulation truly is where the magic happens. It's how your body produces progesterone. And trust me, progesterone is basically your nervous system's best friend, and you don't want to be missing out on it. Think of progesterone kind of as your nature's chill pill. It converts to something called allpregnalone. I'm going to say that wrong. Allpregnanolone. I always have to slow it down for that one, which acts like your GABA in your brain. That is your calm, cool, collected neurotransmitter. This is why you might feel more anxious or on edge when you're not ovulating regularly. Your body is literally missing its monthly dose of natural anxiety relief. But here's where it gets really interesting. When we start paying attention to our cycles, we're not just tracking ovulation and bleeding. We're getting intel on our entire body systems. So let me go deeper into this. Your cycle is reporting on so many things. it is reporting on really everything that's happening in your body. So let's dive in this a little bit deeper. Let's look at your cycle length. This is your first cue. When we are looking at our cycle length, we're looking for that sweet spot of 25 days to 35 days. If your cycle is consistently shorter than 24 days, your body might be telling you that your progesterone levels are struggling, or that you might have excess estrogen floating around. But on the flip side, if your cycles are all over the map, sometimes 28 days, sometimes 40, that's your nervous system waving a flag saying, hey, we're dealing with some stress over here and we need it tended to. The next clue that you're going to want to look at is your period length. This is another major piece of our puzzle. So 3 to 7 days is kind of the Goldilocks zone. Now, I call it the Goldilocks zone because really we're looking at what is consistent with your pattern. What has been the story that your body's been telling you for a long duration of time? For some of us, we may bleed 3 days, or we might notice 2 days. For myself, I noticed that I always had a 4 to 5 day cycle. And then after my third baby, my cycle went down to 2 days, but I also hit my 40s. So at first I was looking at my cycle length of that it changed, but then I noticed for a year that this was now my new normal because it was still consistent. So we're looking at that consistency as well when we're talking about the Goldilocks zone. Now let's go and talk about if we're bleeding more than 8 days. This could be your body's way of saying that your liver needs some love with some estrogen detoxification. Or maybe your thyroid is feeling a little bit sluggish and we need to tend to that. Now, if your period is only lasting that day or two, this might mean that you're not actually ovulating or that your estrogen levels need some support. So for me, instance, when I talked about how after I had my third baby that my cycle shifted from that 4 to 5 days down to 2 days, I actually tested my hormones and my estrogen was low, but I was also in my 40s. And so this was, welcome to perimenopause. So this is something that I still work on at 45 of like, how do I support my estrogen so that I can have a healthy period? And that's a topic for another day, but just know that that might be a symptom of why you might be only bleeding that 1 to 2 days. We also want to look at blood loss here as well. I know this isn't the most glamorous conversation, but it is really important for us to discuss. You should be losing about 30 to 60 milliliters of blood per cycle. That's roughly about your 2 to 4 tablespoons. I know you're probably hearing this and thinking, no, I bleed way more than that, but you'd be surprised if you were to actually measure it, how much blood's actually coming out. Now, the easier way to know this, because I'm sure most of us aren't carrying measuring spoons in our bathroom with us, is to look at how many pads and tampons we're going through. So if you're soaking through a tampon or a pad every hour, or if you're dealing with clots that are larger than 1 inch, and if you're feeling exhausted and dizzy during your period, these are all indicators that your body is telling you that it needs some attention, that it needs some help here, okay? So we should not have to change our tampon or our pad every hour. That's a sign of heavy bleeding. Now, color and consistency. We want to look at that too when we're looking at our menstrual blood. So this is, getting down and peeking at what the blood actually looks like. This helps us get insight into what's happening in our circulation, our iron levels, and if our hormones are balanced. We want to see that rich, saturated red color. Brown or very dark blood might mean things are moving a little too slowly. Maybe your uterus needs a better positioning, or your pelvic circulation could use some support. Where super light or pink or thin blood often points to low estrogen and also iron deficiency. Okay, so now here's where things get really fascinating. And this is the part that blew my mind when I first learned it. Our cycle isn't just reporting on our reproductive health. It's giving us an insight and a window into our entire body's ecosystem because everything is interconnected in our body. So when we're looking at our report card and how well we're doing with our health, or if we need to be concerned or tend to certain aspects of our life, one of the biggest things we want to look at is stress and your adrenals. And if you've been following me, you know that this is like my favorite topic ever to talk about because this impacts every woman so incredibly deeply. When we're chronically stressed, and let's be honest, most of us women are carrying so much mental load that we are chronically stressed. And what happens here is that our HPA axis gets all wonky. HPA axis stands for our hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which is basically your stress response system. So when this system gets overloaded or overwhelmed, it starts stealing resources from your reproductive hormones. Your body is so incredibly smart. If it thinks that you're in danger, it's going to prioritize immediate survival over making babies. It wants you to live. So this shows up as irregular cycles, missed ovulation, low libido, and that lovely combo of fatigue and anxiety that so many of us know all too well. Your cycle is literally telling you, hey, we need you to address this stress situation before I can do my job properly. The second thing that we get information on is our blood sugar balancing. This one is really huge. And most people don't realize that it's connected to our hormonal health. When your blood sugar is on a roller coaster, spiking with that afternoon cookie and then crashing before dinner, it really does mess with our ovarian function. Insulin resistance can increase our androgens, it can raise our estrogen levels, and it can contribute to that estrogen dominance pattern that we see with heavy periods or with really intense PMS. So your cycle becomes this monthly reminder to get your blood sugar stable. But here's something that's really cool that I learned, and I just think this is so incredibly fascinating of our body. Our insulin sensitivity actually changes throughout our cycle because everything changes throughout our cycle and our body's needs change throughout our cycle. So it makes sense that our insulin would also change because the food consumption and the types of food we need are also different. So you are more insulin sensitive in your follicular phase, so the first half of your cycle. And you're more resistant to insulin in your luteal phase, which really does explain those pre-period chocolate and cookie cravings. So this is what's happening in our body, and this can help us understand, rather than being taken over by these cravings, we can understand what's also happening in our cycle. The next is our thyroid health. Your thyroid and your ovaries are like best friends. If one is struggling, the other feels it too. So we really want to tend to it. Low thyroid function can cause longer, heavier periods, while an overactive thyroid might give you shorter, later periods. And your basal body temperature throughout your cycle can actually give you clues about your thyroid health, which I think is so crazy and yet so brilliant of our body that it tells us this without actually having to do a test driven by somebody else. So we want to see that there is a rise after ovulation in our temperature, which really does just confirms that progesterone production is happening. And then the next thing is our gut health. And this is a big one because it connects everything. Your gut health directly impacts your hormones through something that's called estrobolome. That's the collection of bacteria in your gut that helps metabolize estrogen, which really is just a way of saying that when your gut is happy, estrogen gets processed and eliminated properly out of your body like it's meant to. But if your gut is struggling, perhaps with dysbiosis or inflammation, estrogen can actually get reactivated and reabsorbed back into the bloodstream from the gut and kind of take over your whole hormonal system. It leads to estrogen dominance and all the fun symptoms that can come with being estrogen dominant, like sore breasts, for instance. That's always my big first clue indicator when something's going on with my body is the sore breasts. It means that there's too much estrogen in my system. So where this really becomes important is knowing that regular bowel movements with your gut health aren't just digestive comfort, but they're actually essential for our hormone balance. If we're not eliminating daily, then you're literally reabsorbing your hormones back into your body that your body was trying to get rid of. And so we really want to support that gut health, and we really want to support our elimination process. So what does this mean for you? How do you actually use your cycle as your monthly report card? Well, first thing is first, we need to start tracking our cycle. And I'm not talking about just marking when your period starts on a calendar app on your phone. Apps can be amazing, but they can also be really limiting sometimes if they don't allow us to record the full picture of what we're experiencing on a daily basis. So what I mean is getting curious about all the patterns that your body is showing you. Every symptom is a piece of information. It's intel that we can use to decode what's happening in your overall health. So when we look at tracking our cycle, the first thing we want to look at is some basic tracking. This includes your period start and end dates, the flow intensity, any spotting maybe that you experienced, physical symptoms like cramping or breast tenderness, looking at your emotional patterns that are happening in your body. Notice your energy levels, your quality of sleep, your skin, your digestion. Realistically, document everything that comes up. Even if you don't think that it is related, I always say still document it, especially if you're working with a hormone coach or practitioner, because this is all really important information. Even joint pain is related to low estrogen. So like every little thing that your body's trying to communicate with you, put it down on paper. And then from there, we'll start to decode it. We'll start to understand it. Now, if you want to go into advanced tracking and want to take it a step further, this involves basal body temperature tracking. And so this is where we would track our temperature to see that, what our temperature levels are, what our baseline normally is when we're in our second or first half of our cycle when there's estrogen present. This typically is in the same range for every woman, around 97 to 97.7 degrees Fahrenheit. And then after ovulation happens, we see this rise that happens. And this is important to see this rise in temperature because it means that we actually ovulated, that progesterone is being made. Progesterone is a warming hormone. Another great thing about the basal body temperature is that if our temperatures are consistently lower, like in that 96th range, this might start indicating that there's a thyroid issue that we need support with. Now, tracking temperature, there's so many ways that it has become so simplified and so easy, where you can use devices like an Apple Watch or an Oura Ring. You can use the temp drop thermometer, which helps put it all on a chart for you. It's an amazing device. But if you really want to really understand this, and especially if you want to use it for a birth control method, I highly, highly recommend finding a FAM practitioner. There's so many of them out there. They're going to teach you exactly what temperatures to look at. They're going to show you your chart and help you understand what's happening in your chart. It's amazing. Now, another advanced tracking method is going to be your cervical fluid changes and your cervical positioning. These are things that can also indicate that ovulation has happened or is about to happen. So cervical fluid, we want to see that there is cervical fluid of some sort, some kind of mucus in the first half of our cycle, because that means that the estrogen there is it. Our cervical fluid is an indicator of estrogen. And then in the second half of our cycle, we actually want it to be more dry. Now, some women might see experiences of some estrogen. Some might only see it for a blip of a day, because in that second half of the cycle, not to get too much into this, but in the second half of the cycle, when there's progesterone, there is a day or two where estrogen kind of pokes its head back into the picture and then it drops back again. And this is just to help the body prepare for releasing the uterine lining for our period. So we want to see what's happening with cervical fluid, especially sometimes when you're in perimenopause, because sometimes women think in the second half of their cycle, it's like, oh, I've actually experienced a lot of moisture. but that's not actually cervical fluid. That might be a little bit of urinary incontinence that's happening, just small little dribbles that wouldn't even be noticeable. It's not like you're peeing your pants, but it can start to experience this. And that is because of estrogen receptors in the urethra. So once again, it's not anything you've done wrong, but it does help us about something that's happening in your health. And then cervical positioning, our cervix has to shift its positioning and its firmness or softness depending on where we're in the cycle. Once again, really crazy information, really helpful information. It tells us so much. So it's really important for us to start to see how our cycle shifts and changes. So advanced tracking can be really helpful, but if you're listening to this and you're like, oh my God, that feels like a lot, start off with the basic tracking. Just start off when your cycle starts, when it ends, and then all the symptoms you experience every day. It's important to mark something every day because then we get to see a pattern. And this is what I think is so fascinating about women's bodies is that when we track for at least 3 months, you're going to see repetitive symptoms showing up on the exact same days. We are so cyclical. Our bodies really do operate in patterns. And when there's a disruption to our health and our wellness, we're going to see that in our patterns shifting as well. And so much information we can get from tracking our cycle. Now that we understand the importance of cycle tracking and we actually understand like what's kind of influencing or what to watch for, I want to address another elephant in the room here because I know so many women experience this, and that is hormonal birth control. Now, I'm not here to tell you to be on it or off it. There is a time and a place for hormonal birth control. There really, truly is. But I find that so many women are not, I don't even want to say that they're not told the truth about birth control, but we're not fully informed about birth control or painted the most accurate picture of what it's doing. So it's really important to know that the pill, it does not regulate your hormones. It actually suppresses them. So if somebody's told you to go on hormonal birth control because it's going to regulate your cycle or it's going to help your hormones balance, that's not true. It's completely not true. And this is a conversation that you can go in deeper with your healthcare provider of like asking them to explain, like, how is this helpful for me? Now, like I said, there is a time and a place for birth control. I truly believe in that. But using it as and selling it as this thing that's going to help balance our hormones or regulate our cycle, it's really important that you know that it's actually suppressing it, and it could potentially be making a lot of our symptoms worse and also impacting our wellness and our health in drastic ways. Hormonal birth control, in my personal opinion, once again, my personal opinion, is never something that we should be on for a long duration of time. If we are on it, it should have an expiry date of when we're going off of this, because it does create so much disruption in our health. So when you're on the birth control pill, you're not actually having a menstrual cycle. You're having what we call a withdrawal bleed from synthetic hormones. And your ovaries are actually completely shut down. So you're missing out on that monthly production of progesterone. And remember, progesterone is our friend that helps with the nervous system. It's really important, especially with anxiety, depression, all those things. So you're missing out on something that's really important for all those nervous system regulating benefits. It's also, you're missing out on the progesterone and what it does for our bone protection and our anti-inflammatory effects in our body. So I just want to make sure that you have accurate information. And if you're using the pill as a health indicator, just know that you're not getting the full picture, because it's not accurately connecting you to your natural hormonal rhythms, and it's not actually showing you what's happening with your wellness. It's shutting down that fifth vital sign. Our period is actually called our fifth vital sign for a reason. So if you choose to come off hormonal birth control, just know that your body might need some time to remember how to cycle naturally again. This maturation of the menstrual cycle can take up to 12 years, and using the pill during that 12-year period can actually pause that process. So, this is essentially, when we were on it as teens or in our early 20s, we could have suppressed a part of the process. And so it's going to take some time for our ovaries and our body to relearn things as well. So just be patient with yourself and consider working with a practitioner who really understands how to support you post-pill recovery, which is a real thing. Now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about what you can do right now to support your cycle and optimize this monthly health report card that we're talking about here. So the first thing is stress management. This is a non-negotiable in my mind. I tell clients all the time that they need to commit to at least 2 hours per week of activity that they actually really love. This should be something that really brings joy into your heart, not something that you should be doing, but something that you just are so passionate about and that brings you excitement. So this can be reading, this can be walking, this can be dancing in your kitchen, this can be having, uninterrupted time maybe in a bath or just in a locked room, whatever you need. But your nervous system needs some regular deposits of relaxation, calmness, joy, pleasure into its calm account, okay? You need to build up that calm account a bit. The other thing is knowing that nutrition really does matter, especially when it comes to inflammation. So chronic inflammation is kind of like having a cranky toddler in your body. It disrupts everything. It's reducing, or what things that we can do is reduce your inflammatory foods like excess sugar, processed wheat, conventional dairy can also make a huge difference in your cycle symptoms. So focus on getting adequate protein, enough healthy fats. The low-fat diet ruined a lot of us if we're in our 40s because we went through that whole stint of fearing fats, but healthy fats are good, and really restoring your blood sugar balance. Another little hack for us is sleep. Sleep is more important than exercise if you had to choose between the two. 7 to 8 hours of quality sleep stabilizes our HPA axis. It also improves our insulin sensitivity, and it supports the proper release of our reproductive hormones. So your body does more of its hormonal housekeeping while you're actually sleeping, which is why it is so important for us to tend to our sleep and make a healthy sleep routine. Next is movement. And this is where I say, do the things that you enjoy, not things that are going to punish you. Be joyful about movement, really do things that support your circulation, that reduce your cortisol, that build that lean muscle mass. This could be yoga, it could be walking, it could be strength training, it can be dancing. Just do something that makes you feel alive in your body and move your body. We are in a generation right now where we just sit a lot. I know this. I'm at my desk all the time. And I have to put in movement dates in my calendar. As ridiculous as that sounds, I have an alarm that goes off to remind myself that I need to move a few times a day, because otherwise I can get pigeonholed into just sitting at my desk and doing what it is that I'm doing, because I can get very captivated in my work. So movement is important. And then lastly, let's talk about minimizing our toxin exposure where we can. And I'm not asking you to go through your cupboards and throw everything out, but we need to start being mindful of endocrine disrupting chemicals in our personal care products, especially because there's a lot of them in there. Our cleaning supplies, our food storage. These are all things that we can start to change out slowly to help our natural hormone production and our metabolism. So just start thinking about, as something runs out, can I replace it with a better choice? And the Yuka app is such an amazing app to use this. I'll actually throw that link in our comments below here for you. I like to scan everything because there's things that, you'll find in the organic aisle and you're like, I'm making a good choice. And then you'll scan it and you'll realize it's actually not that great. So it helps us to make these choices, especially with our skin products. That's where I use it the most. So here's what I want you to remember from today's discussion or episode is that your cycle is not something that is happening to you. It is really something that's happening for you. It's your body's way of keeping you informed about what's working and what needs attention. And I think this is what is so brilliant about the female body. And in fact, I think I read it somewhere. I think it was in Dr. Luann Brezendine's book, The Female Brain, where she talks about it's assumed that periods might be the reason why women actually have longer longevity than men, why we live longer than men, is because we have this purification system. We have this intelligence system within us that's giving us feedback all the time about our health and our wellness. So, ladies, it is so incredibly important. So keep tuning into your cycle. When you start viewing your menstrual cycle as this valuable health data instead of an inconvenience, everything really does shift. We begin to see our patterns. We begin to understand why we feel anxious on certain days, why our skin breaks out at specific times, and why our energy dips or soars. We realize that our body is trying to communicate with us all along, and we just need to learn its language, something that we haven't been taught. So this is the time where we can really start to learn it. And here's the beautiful thing about our cycles. They give you a fresh start every month. Every cycle is an opportunity to implement what you've learned to support your body a little better and to fine-tune your approaches to stress, nutrition, sleep, and self-care, or to get the feedback that those things that we did actually stepped us back a step, and we just have to go back to what we were doing because it actually was working. Sometimes we don't think things are working until we remove them from our daily habits, and then we see that it actually was working, so we have to reintegrate. And just know that your 20s and your 30s, this is a perfect time to start mastering this language, because the habits that you build now, the relationship you develop with your cycle now, will serve you through perimenopause and beyond. So think of it as an investment in your future self. And I will do a podcast episode all on why we need to start thinking about perimenopause in our 20s and our 30s, because so much is changing in our body during those times that can actually help us thrive in that second half of our life. So here's my challenge for you. Now that we've gone through all of this, I'm just encouraging you to start tracking your cycle. Get curious. Pay attention to what your body's telling you through your cycle. And if you're sitting here thinking, this all makes sense, but I have no idea where to start, or I'm tracking my cycle and I'm still a hot mess, that's where I can come in. I am a hormone health practitioner, and I offer a one-on-one hormone reset coaching program where we literally spend 12 weeks going through your hormonal blueprint and bringing you from burnout to balance, getting your hormones flowing with ease for optimum health. And we decode exactly what your cycle is trying to tell you about your unique body and create a personalized plan that it will address root causes, whether that be stress, gut health, blood sugar, nutrient deficiency, liver detoxification, or all of the above. So just know that this is always an option for you, because I don't want women to feel like they can't thrive with their cycle. Because this isn't just about managing symptoms or white knuckling our way through another difficult cycle. It really is about reclaiming our vitality, reconnecting with our body's wisdom, and reviving that vibrant version of yourself that has been buried under overwhelm. So there's so many things that we can do, so many ways that we can support the body. And we just have to learn them, because this is a new way of living in alignment with our body so that we can be healthy, that we can create wellness, and we can create hormones that are balanced. Your cycle really wants to be your ally, and not just need the right roadmap and support to get us there. So I hope that this has really resonated with you this week. I hope that this exploration of your cycle as your monthly health report card has helped. And I hope you're walking away feeling a bit more empowered, informed, and maybe a little excited about the wisdom of your body and what it has been trying to share with you. So go get a pen and paper, maybe a pretty journal, or use my chart, my cycle chart. I will attach a link to that as well for you. So that way you can start tracking your cycle and get to know your body, because your body is really your biggest ally right now when it comes to health and wellness. Are you excited about aligning to your cycle? If so, make sure that you subscribe to this podcast and like the episode if it really resonated with you. Until next time, remember, womb wisdom equals connection to self, which ultimately equals inspired living.